I've been at UVU for a little over 2 years, and one thing that I can say in my time here so far, I've always felt like teaching is my first priority. Yes, there's always committee work and there's always lots of administrative things that need to be done, but the idea that, we're a teaching institution first means that I get to put teaching first, which means I get to put, the students in my programs first. So the Center for Social Impact, they run a series of student engagement programs. So they use a framework called the Pathways of Social Impact. So it's a kind of a thinking tool for students to think about how they might want to make an impact. For a long time in higher ed, we had volunteer centers, and it kind of gave this idea that it was like, okay, you find your job, and then when you want to give back, then you go do volunteer work, right? And this framework, the Pathways of Social Impact, dispel that, and it talks about like finding a meaningful career path that you can also make a difference, right? That you don't need to separate those things. I support the Social Impact Scholars Program. So basically, they kind of design their own experience around social impact and do some service learning classes, take an impact seminar class, and do some capstone, something meaningful that they can put a cap on their impact experience. One of the things that we talk about in the program is thinking about really meaningful experiences in higher education, right? And very often that points back to a specific relationship that somebody had with a teacher or with an advisor or with a coach. That's where I really think the potential of higher education shines. We're never perfect teachers. Every semester that we teach is an opportunity to learn a little bit more ourselves and to be a little bit better the next time we teach. I think that connects into this idea of those meaningful relationships. It's always an opportunity to reflect and to grow and to think how things can be a little bit different in the next semester and the next class. People think like, oh, well, you must have known that you wanted to be a professor, right? There must have been some intention with you in moving towards this path. I would say I was not like the most stellar high school student. I didn't really have much of a plan after graduation. I kind of was kicking around a couple ideas. None of them were, necessarily aspirational. And a soccer coach showed up at my high school, and one thing led to another, and I ended up going to Iowa Wesleyan on a partial soccer scholarship. And, the soccer program is really what kind of got me there and what kept me there, right? I had to keep my grades up. I had to go to class to be on the soccer team, and we had a engaged learning requirement in my bachelor's that kind of changed my trajectory, and I was really excited to graduate. Shortly after I graduated, there was a part-time job at Salt Lake Community College. It was community partnerships coordination, and I was like, oh, this will be really fun. It's really community facing, and I did that for a couple years, and then I took on a student program, and something there kind of clicked, right? And it was working with college students and, getting to work with them and what they cared about and thinking about how they could make changes in the world the way that they wanted to do it. And so I started to kind of lean in and think like, oh, this is a cool, this is a good environment to be in. I really enjoy it. So I've definitely kind of wandered into higher ed, I think, multiple times, and it's a complex place to work, but it's also been overall rewarding, not without its challenges, but overall rewarding. I remember I was at the Modern Art Museum in downtown Chicago with my mom years ago, and I don't remember what the exhibit was exactly. It was about like the way that Chicago came to be a city. And there was just this big picture that said, optimism trumps planning. And they said like, this is the master plan for the city of Chicago, right? And the idea that it's just like, if you have good intention and you have like some positive momentum, that can be more meaningful than having a highly scripted, like, I know exactly what this is supposed to look like. And I think even when students have a very clear sort of like, this is where I want to go and how I'm trying to approach it, there's always more questions than answers. And I think how that translates to working with students is certainly not that I have an answer for them. It's always like, is this program the right fit for you and how you kind of see yourself moving forward? What are the things that you really want to experience in your time as a student or after your time as a student? The idea of students visualizing their accomplishments, whether it's attaining their degree or their certification or into their future lives, a lot of times that's their jobs and their work, but I think it's also living a happy, fulfilling life. When people aren't able to see themselves in those roles, it's really hard to set goals to move towards it. So the idea of visualizing and being able to, see ourselves as leaders in higher education is part of what we try to do throughout the program. There's an element of the college experience that I think is about learning more about who we are and who we want to be. You don't have to have, the next 15 years of your life figured out to know, a general direction that you want to go and explore into. That sort of finding ourselves can be, and I think is a part of the college experience for lots of people.